Bogies. Bogies! Bogies!
Bogey tracks. In a sport, a bogey team is usually a term heard in football to describe a team that another team will often struggle against. Like how Manchester City always seem to lose to Tottenham. A similar thing can be applied in Formula 1 with bogey tracks. Tracks that drivers hate to go to and always seem to struggle at. The one that's been mentioned the most recently is Max Verstappen and Singapore. He's never won there, never had pole there, and never had the fastest lap there, despite racing there 9 times. In fact, it's the only track on the calendar that Verstappen hasn't been able to win at, with a best result of 2nd, which he's got 3 times. But that got me thinking, what are the bogey tracks of some of F1's all-time greats? And that's what this video is about. Interestingly, Singapore is not only a bogey track for Max Verstappen. Michael Schumacher also had a tough time in Marina Bay, racing there 3 times and never being able to finish in the top 10. In fact, he only actually finished the race once and finished 13th. But Schumacher's true bogey track could in fact be Shanghai, where ironically he got his final win. But outside of that win, in the other 5 times he raced there, he only ever scored 5 points. Kimi Raikkonen also had a tough time in Singapore, racing there 10 times and scoring a total of 64 points. But the track that Raikkonen really struggled at was Austria, with 13 races and 3 podiums, an average grid position of 9.5 and a finishing position of 7.2, scoring a combined 2 points across his final 5 appearances in Austria. Raikkonen shares this bogey track with his former teammate Sebastian Vettel and fellow Ferrari world champion Jody Scheckter. Vettel had 11 races in Austria, never winning and only having 2 podiums, with an average finishing position of 8.63 and scoring 1 point across his final 5 appearances in Spielberg. For Scheckter, we have to go back to when the track was called the Österreichen-Ring, and in his 7 races there, he had 0 wins, 0 poles, 0 fastest laps, 0 podiums, and 3 points. All of those 3 points coming from 1 race in 1979. Mario Andretti also struggled in the Styrian Hills with 2 points from 9 races and only ever finishing the race once. And while the track that will become known as the Red Bull Ring is a popular bogey track, it is not the most popular one for our world champions. That would be Monaco, which is the bogey track for a staggering 9 world champions. Firstly, we have Jim Clark, one of the greatest of all time. He raced around Monaco 6 times and had pole position there 4 times, which is just one of Senna's all-time pole record for Monaco, which may make you think, why is this a bogey track? But Clark never had the luck in the Principality on race day, only actually finishing the race in his career once and scoring a total of 3 points. Mike Hawthorne also struggled around Monaco, scoring 1 point in his 4 races at the track. Another Ferrari world champion who struggled there was John Surtees, who scored 9 points from his 12 appearances at Monaco, never appearing on the podium. Alan Jones has more appearances at Monaco than he does points from Monaco, with 8 races and 7 points. And he came oh so close to winning the race in 1981 until an issue forced him to settle for P2 on lap 73 of 76 in a race made famous on the brilliant Stop and Go F1 retro review of 1981. Outside of that race, Jones just scored 1 point in his 7 other races in Monaco. Nigel Mansell has raced in Monaco 12 times and has never been able to win it, despite 2 pole positions and 2 podiums, including that famous 1992 race where he is desperately trying to pass Senna but has to settle for P2. Outside of this, 7 of his 12 races at Monaco ended before the checkered flag with a DNF. If there was ever one driver seemingly destined to do well at Monaco, it would be the son of Mr. Monaco. But for Damon Hill, it was never the best race. With 8 races there and only 12 points, he did have pole in 1995, but had to settle for second place. And of course, his engine would blow up in that infamous 1996 race whilst he was in the lead. His 1996 teammate Jacques Villeneuve would also struggle in Monaco with 10 appearances, but only 5 points. Could be worse though. James Hunt raced around Monaco 7 times and never scored a single point there, and Nelson Piquet raced there 13 times and got 16 points, failing to finish the race 9 times. There are a few drivers whose bogey track is actually their home track, such as Jenson Button, who competed at Silverstone 17 times and achieved 0 wins, 0 poles, 0 fast laps and 0 podiums, with a best ever result of 4th, which he got on 3 separate occasions, but had an average starting position of 12th and average finishing position of 8th. Phil Hill also struggled at his home race, with 4 races at Watkins Glen and never being able to score a point. But perhaps the most famous home bogey track was for Ayrton Senna, when the Brazilian Grand Prix was held at Jacarepaguá. Senna did get pole 3 times, but was never able to win, and only actually scored points once, with a second place in 1986. But thankfully for Senna, the Brazilian GP was moved in 1990 to Interlagos, where he eventually would be more lucky, winning his home race in 1991 and 1993. One of the hardest drivers to find a bogey track for is Juan Manuel Fangio, who has the fantastic stat of winning at every track he's been to more than twice, which is unequalled by any other world champion. But if we had to pick one, maybe it is Silverstone, where Fangio raced 5 times and won once, and it was on his final attempt in 1956 that he would win. But to be fair to Fangio, his other results were 2 seconds, a 4th and a DNF. Whilst we're dealing with world champions from the 1950s, both Ascari and Farina had the same bogey track, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Let me do a quick Google.
We are looking at how to pronounce the name of this city, located in France, in the region of Champagne, or Champagne region really. In French it is said as Reims, Reims. In English therefore, Reims, Reims.
Reims was the home of the 1950s French Grand Prix. Ascari never won here from 4 races, and in fact his one and only non-start in his career was at this track in 1950 for being too slow in qualifying. Farina also had 4 races here and scored 1 more points than Ascari with 4 points. If we go to the champions of the 1960s, Jack Brabham's bogey track is Monza, racing here 10 times and getting 2 podiums for a total of 12 points, retiring 7 times. Keke Rosberg also did not like it in Monza, scoring 3 points from his 8 races in the Temple of Speed, only getting those points in his final appearance at the track, finishing 4th. Although his son Nico would go on to win in Monza, his bogey track being the Hungaroring, racing there 11 times and never winning and getting on the podium twice. The Hungaroring would also be the bogey track of Alain Prost, racing there 7 times and never being able to win. He would get his one and only pole position at the track in his final season in 1993, but he would stall on the grid and had to start the race from the back, eventually finishing 12th, which was the first time he'd actually finished that race in 4 years. Graham Hill and Fernando Alonso both share the same bogey track, Spa. Neither driver has won there, Hill racing there 11 times, and he did have pole 3 times, but only appeared on the podium once. And Alonso has raced there a massive 20 times, to only be on the podium 3 times, and has never ever started from the front row. Let's stick with some European circuits now, with Imola, the bogey track of Mika Hakkinen, racing there 10 times, never winning and appearing on the podium twice to get a total of 18 points. And we have to go to the Nürburgring to find the bogey track of Denny Hulme, and again he is another one who has managed to win at his bogey track, but this is the only time he would score points there in 9 races. We go to Mexico for Jackie Stewart and Jochen Rindt, Stewart raced there 6 times to only score 3 points, and Rintz raced there 5 times and never scored a point. We go north to Montreal for Niki Lauda's bogey track, where he raced 6 times and scored 6 points, thanks to the second place in 1984, the only time Lauda finished a race in Canada. The penultimate driver to talk about is Emerson Fittipaldi, whose bogey track is Kyalami in South Africa, never winning from 10 races and appearing on the podium twice for 10 points. Again, the only time he ever scored points at this track, going pointless in his last 7 appearances at the track. And finally, Lewis Hamilton, the man who has won more than any other driver in the history of the sport, and the man who has the most wins at different circuits with 31. Now you could look at Zandvoort, where Lewis has raced 5 times and never won, and has 1 podium, but that track kind of came at the time in Lewis's career where he wasn't really winning many races ever. So I feel more of a bogey track for Lewis is Baku. Hamilton has raced there 9 times and has won, but only once, and only has 2 podiums. In fact, Nico Rosberg has actually led more laps at Baku in his 1 race there compared to Lewis Hamilton's 9 at the track, only appearing in the top 5 once in the last 5 years. So there you have it. These are the tracks that keep the best in the world up at night. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time.